So ReNeuron is a stem cell therapy development company, and we have two core stem cell technology platforms. One is based around a neural stem cell, a neural progenitor cell called CTX. The second platform is based around a retinal progenitor cell, so again a multipotent cell. The CTX cells are being deployed primarily against stroke, or the consequences of stroke disability in other words. That's our lead program with CTX. That's in phase 2, or just coming out of phase 2, which is the data we announced recently. And our human retinal progenitor cells, or hRPCs for short, are being directed towards retinal degenerative diseases, and the first target there is retinitis pigmentosa, which is an inherited blindness-causing disease caused by deterioration of photoreceptors in the retina. I think there are two things. Firstly, ReNeuron has always made it its business to develop or to try and harness stem cell science into truly commercial products. So a stem cell approach, but which can be, if you like, scaled to a cost of goods that's going to be attractive commercially. And therefore we adopt an allogeneic approach, which means that any patient presenting can take our stem cells for the diseases that we're targeting, rather than perhaps using the patient's own stem cells, which clearly takes more effort in terms of extracting those cells, perhaps manipulating them in some way and then reintroducing them. So we're adopting a one-size-fits-all approach, and we're not unique in that respect, but we do believe, alongside others, that probably is the optimum approach from a commercial standpoint. The second aspect, I think, for a stem cell business like us is that we, as I said earlier, we do have more than one platform. We have our CTX cells and our hRPC cells, both of which we believe are platforms in that they can be harnessed against more than one particular disease, and that obviously gives us more shots on goal, if you will. So ideally, we'd like to use those two stem cells and deploy them as far as we can, but for the moment, as I mentioned, our initial targets are primarily stroke and retinitis pigmentosa, but hopefully we'll be able to develop beyond those in due course. Yeah, well, we're very excited by the results that we've seen so far with those data. We reported in 21 patients treated in a phase 2 study. These were all disabled stroke patients, all of which have now reached 3-month follow-up. A number of them have also reached both 6-month and indeed 12-month follow-up in that study. And essentially what we're seeing is a very good response rate in all of the endpoints that we are measuring in that study, but most especially the endpoints related to disability and activities of daily living. So these are measures that are really important from the patient's perspective in terms of their ability to perform useful tasks, to be able to kind of, move themselves out of bed in the morning, to get dressed and washed, that kind of thing. And on those measures, these general measures of disability and activities of daily living, we saw a very good response rate in these patients, sufficient to give us the confidence to move this particular intervention into its next stage, which will be a much larger placebo-controlled phase 3 study. So the rest of the pipeline, we have one other study going with our CTX cells in critical limb ischemia. That's a very straightforward phase 1 study, and we'll hope to report some data with that in the early part of next year, 2017. Our retinitis pigmentosa program is currently in a phase 1/2 clinical study in the US. So it's currently going through its phase 1, the phase 1 part of that study, so the safety part of it, and that's proceeding very well. So we hope to have some safety data from that study in the middle part of next year, and some efficacy data from the phase 2 portion of that study towards the end of 2017. So we have a number of things ongoing, and of course alongside that we'd hope to be able to report progression of our stroke program into its phase 3 study during the course of next year, and it's very likely that will be a US-based study as well. Well, the next 2 to 3 years are going to be a busy period for us. All of the programs I've mentioned are going to be reporting further data. In terms of stroke disability, the phase 2 data will mature further actually, so we're very likely to report further data from that study as all of those 21 patients go through long-term follow-up. And indeed, within the next 3 years, certainly we'd hope to be able to report some data with the next study, the phase 3 study, and indeed within that period, all being well, if we can move our retinitis pigmentosa program through phase 1/2 into its pivotal phase 2/3 study, then within that period we may be able to report data with that latter study as well. And that's important because in the case of RP, that is an orphan indication, and we also have fast track status for that program from the FDA, which means that if the data is good enough, we're looking at 2 clinical studies to get that program to market application. The phase 1/2 study that's currently underway, followed by a pivotal phase 2/3 study in that indication.